Pero ahorita.
Ahorita sí.
Ahorita sí, luego no.
Luego no.
Ahora sí, ahora no. Para que no estés solo.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Gracias, fotógrafo.
Buenos días, bienvenidas y bienvenidos al Instituto de Geografía. Esta es su casa y nos complace mucho recibirlos hoy para escuchar la conferencia Las publicaciones en acceso abierto con OJS3, una perspectiva general de las novedades del PKP, impartida por el profesor Kenny Stranak, que es director asociado del Public Knowledge Project de la Universidad Simon Fraser. Queremos agradecerle muy encarecidamente al profesor porque dedicó parte de su tiempo de vacaciones, él está de vacaciones en México y muy generosamente aceptó dar una conferencia. Me bastaron ahorita unos minutos de platicar con él para darme cuenta de que es la clase de persona comprometida, desinteresada, que a quien lo que más le preocupa es que el mundo sea mejor, lo hace a través de este trabajo. Muchas gracias, profesor. También queremos agradecer a la red de editores de la UNAM y a la Dirección General de Publicaciones y Fomento Editorial de nuestra máxima casa de estudios, en particular a Guillermo Chávez Sánchez, que es subdirector de revistas académicas y publicaciones electrónicas, por su apoyo para este evento. El doctor Kenny Stranak es director asociado para Community Engagement and Learning, que es participación de la comunidad y aprendizaje en el proyecto de aprendizaje público PKP, por sus siglas en inglés, en la Universidad Simon Fraser de Vancouver, en la Columbia Británica de Canadá, donde dirige la escuela en línea de PKP para los editores de acceso abierto. También es responsable de la comercialización y comunicaciones, desarrollo comunitario, manejo de proyecto y experiencia de los usuarios en PKP. Tiene una maestría en bibliotecología y ciencia de la información por la Universidad de la Columbia Británica y una maestría en educación para adultos por la Universidad de Regina. Ha publicado en Learned Publishing, Educos Review, en las Serials Librarian, se llama la Serials Librarian, y ha dado presentaciones, coordinado talleres y organizado eventos en diferentes partes del mundo, la mayoría durante sus vacaciones. Los temas que se abordarán hoy son los servicios y aplicaciones nuevas y emergentes del PKP, incluyendo una perspectiva de la reversión 3.0, que es la más reciente del OJS. Se revisarán también el PKP Index, el PKP Logs Network, el Open Type Settings Tag y otros aspectos. Profesor, muchísimas gracias. Los dejamos con el profesor y al final habrá una sesión de preguntas y respuestas.
Gracias por la introducción. Y gracias a todos por la oportunidad para hablar con todos. Increíble para visitar esta universidad más grande en América Latina. And that's all the Spanish I speak, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll come back next year with more Spanish. So just wait for the screen to come up. Okay, here we go. So as you heard from the introduction, whoop, that's not a good screen. There we go. So my name is Kevin, and I work with the Public Knowledge Project in Vancouver, in Canada. And I've put up my email address and my Twitter handle and the Twitter handle for PKP. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions afterwards, either through email or send me a message via Twitter, whatever you prefer. I'm always happy to talk to people. Because sometimes we'll be talking today and then tomorrow you'll think, oh, what about this? I forgot about that. Now you know where to find me. So please send me questions. You can send me in questions in Spanish and I'll use Google Translate to answer. So what I thought we could talk about today are a few things about the Public Knowledge Project. And one of the things that I do like to emphasize that it is first and foremost a research project. It was born at a university and it continues to exist at a university. From there we can talk a little bit about why open access has been so important to us and why that's driven the work that we do. I'll talk a little bit about open journal systems. I understand many of you are working with open journal systems. I can talk a bit about just where that came from. But then we'll move into talking a little bit about some of the new publishing services that are available for you, if you haven't seen those already. And we'll talk about some of the new things that we're working on, things that are based in our ongoing research, but are becoming part of the software as the research evolves and moves into software development. Talk a little bit about the kinds of community support that are available, some of the things you may know about, some things that are new that we've been working on to make it easier for us to work together going forward. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about a very important research project that I'm part of right now about setting up and investigating open access publishing cooperatives as an alternative mode of sustaining open access. And there may be some ways that we can talk about how you might be interested in getting involved in that. And then I will open up a journal, a test journal in Open Journals 3. And I can show you what that new version looks like. As some of you may be aware, we're moving from the 2.x line that many of you have been working with into a whole new generation of the software. It's the biggest change in 10 years, so there's a lot there. And we can just walk through what you'd see as an editor after you do the upgrade. And then we can have just some time for questions and discussion, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that come up from any of the things we're talking about today. Sound okay? Okay. So I wanted to just start off with research. The Public Knowledge Project was born as a research project. Some of you may have met Dr. John Walensky, who is our director, who was at the time, back in 1998, which is almost 20 years ago, wow, was a professor of education at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, where I live. And he was interested in what was happening with the transition from print publications to journals going online. And he was also very interested in making a connection between the work that we do at the university and the interests of everyday people in the world, trying to make a connection between our research and why it matters to the general public. And that's why we call our work the Public Knowledge Project, because we wanted to build those connections. And this project, very early on, like I said, back in 1998, thought that with journals going online and being, more available on the internet, that there would be an interesting project to work with our major newspaper in Vancouver, the Vancouver Sun. And what John established was a relationship with the newspaper so that if there was a major story in Vancouver, a big fire or there's a big crime and it's going to be on the front page, the editors of the newspaper would contact John and say, okay, here's this big story. It's going to be in tomorrow's paper. John would talk to his graduate students and he would say, okay, you folks go out and do some research and quickly find some research articles that are relevant to this story, because the citizens of Vancouver are going to be interested in this story. Let's show them how research can teach us more about that story, give us a deeper understanding of that story. And that, the Vancouver Sun was excited about this. The graduate students were excited about this. You know, they started to do it. You know, there'd be a big story. You know, phone those grad students, get out of bed. There's a big story. There's a big fire at the waterfront. Go and do some research. And so when the newspaper came out the next day, you would have your, you know, headline, you'd have the story, and there'd be a bibliography at the bottom. Fantastic. With URLs, because journals are online now. Now, think about that scenario. Can you think what the problem with that was for an ordinary citizen reading the newspaper, going to that link? They would hit a paywall. They couldn't read the research. How can you have public knowledge when the public can't have access? And it was such an eye-opener for this research project to realize, oh, we've taken it for granted sitting in our comfortable offices at our university that we can click a link and read whatever we want. But for people at home, no, they couldn't. This was a real problem for advancing public knowledge. So we started to ask questions about, well, why? Why is it that there needs to be a paywall? Why can't there just be open access? And the publishers, the commercial publishers, came back and said, well, it's very expensive to make the transition to going online. And there are certainly costs, we know that. But does it have to be so expensive? And it's so hard to publish online, so hard. So this is where the idea of open journal systems came from. We thought, well, why don't we make some software? We're talking 1998 now. We're talking a long time ago. Why don't we make some software that could make it easier for folks like you to publish? And if we can make it easier, make it more efficient, can that bring the costs down? Can we eventually move to full open access? So that was the experiment we set. By 2001, we had Open Journal Systems version 1. A graduate student, Kevin Jameson, was hired to write the software. And Kevin was a very smart guy. Not this Kevin, that Kevin. And he said, yep, I'd be happy to work on this project, but it has to be open source. And this is back in like 1999, 2000. Open source? What's that? What's that? He said to academics. and he educated us about the importance of not only making the content free, but the software needs to be free as well. And that became a very strong philosophical foundation for the Public Knowledge Project, that anything that we do, we're going to make it freely available to everybody. And so today, Open Journal Systems is freely available and continues to be so. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I really wanted to focus in on the background and how it was born as a research project and continues to be a research project today. And we'll talk more about research. So why does open access matter? As we said earlier on, when you're trying to build those connections to the general public, to reduce the ivory tower we talk about, to make our research relevant, it has to be openly available. If people can't read it, how can they value it? We've since seen a great uptake in open access. People in this room who may have been involved in this for a number of years will remember the early days where there was very strong pushback against open access. Oh, it's vanity publishing. Oh, it's terrible. It's not peer reviewed. There's been a lot of work in advocacy to move past those myths. And I would say now it's widely accepted that open access is the future. It's even the present. The majority of papers that are published now are published openly. And we're moving on to, is open access valuable? Asking questions like that to how do we do open access? Because we would never suggest that there aren't costs to publish. And you all know about the costs of publishing and to publish well. So what can we do to ensure that this important goal of open access is truly sustainable and is possible for everyone? And that's going to be part of what we'll talk about today as well, again, coming out of some of the research that we continue to do. Many of you are working with open journal systems, so you do know that it is free and open source software, and it does provide a full publication management system. It allows you to have a website, take submissions, do peer review, do the copy editing, the layout editing, and ultimately the publication and make it available. That was our goal back in 2001 when we first created it, and it continues to be the goal today as we move through 15 years of software development and working with folks like yourselves to understand how you're using the software and how it can be made better. An important part of my work for the past 2 years has been on the usability of the software to learn how OJS works well, but also what its shortcomings are, where it could be hard to use, where it was unclear, where it could be improved by the changes that have happened in online technologies over the past 15 years. And I'm hoping that when I show you OJS 3, you'll see some of the results of that. We've had wonderful response from the community, editors, editorial assistants, authors, reviewers, librarians, who've all become involved in usability testing. I've sat down with them, we've walked through the new version of the software, and they've said, yeah, that's good, I like that. Oh, that's terrible, that's terrible, you can't do that. And things that we thought made perfect sense, we learned didn't. So it was a real learning opportunity for us as software developers to work directly with the community to try to make the software even better. So we're really hopeful that the changes we've made that we think and the people we've worked with think make it better, you'll agree. Oh, there's the workflow. I talked about that already. Submission, review, everything that you need to publish professionally. Just wanted to talk a little bit about how it has grown since we started this back in 2001. As of 2015, we've got, the total there is 9,998 OJS journals around the world. Those are journals that have published at least 10 articles in the past 2 years. There's probably double that many journals that are actually out there, but many of them may be archived. They published for a few years, but then they stopped. So they're no longer active journals, but they still have value in that they did create and share knowledge, and now they're acting more like an archive. But we try to focus on what are the ones that are continuing to publish today, what are our active users, what's our active community. So we're just at 10,000 now. One of the leading regions has been Latin America. We've been just overwhelmed by the response in Latin America and in Mexico in particular with the use of OJS. I think if we look at this map, we've got 3,289 of those 10,000, so a third of them are in Latin America, which is fantastic. We've learned from the Latin American publishing community about, so much about how to sustain open access, how you've been getting open access right for so long, and we've been trying to share those lessons through our research more widely. So we appreciate the leadership that you've been showing in this area, and we're pleased to see the continuing growth of the software and its spread around the world. So in addition to software, I wanted to talk a little bit about some work we've been putting into publishing services. When we started the project way back when, we really wanted to make software that would help people publish, but we hadn't realized how much else there is around publishing. There's certainly the website, all of that work, submissions, peer review, but there are other things that we realized that we could help with as well. And a couple of examples are indexing and digital preservation. These are often areas that can be a challenge, especially for new journals when they are online, how they can make sure they're following a professional pattern of publishing. So I wanted to show you the PKP index, if you haven't seen this before. It's a free indexing service for OJS journals. We did this for a couple of reasons. One reason was that many of the journals in our community were asking for help with getting indexed for the first time. As you may know in your own practice, it takes a few years before you can get into some of the major commercial indexes. You have to have a demonstrated pattern of publishing over several years. You have to show that you're a professional, serious journal. But that takes time. And so we were being asked by journals in our community, new journals, well, can you help us get started? can can we get indexed with you somehow? You've got 10,000 journals. Why don't you set up an index? So that's what we've done. Now, I'll show you the URL. Hopefully I can jump over to that. That's it for anybody who's got their devices connected to the internet. You can go to that URL to see it. These slides are also online and I can make those available. So that's the PKP index. Let me scroll down a little bit here. Just some of the recent additions. So there's 674 journals that are listed in here with just over 200,000 records. So 674 out of potentially 10,000. So this is a little bit of advertising to encourage you to sign up and get your journal into the PKP index. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything. It'll increase your visibility. But a second reason we set up the index was because we wanted to have a showcase of all of the great work that's happening. Because OJS is decentralized, we don't have one place where we can show all of the OJS journals. I'll go to meetings like this with people who've never used it before and they'll say, well, that sounds very interesting. Show me your journals. I can't. Because it's decentralized, because it's open source, anybody can take the software, set it up, run it, and never talk to us again, which is fine. But we like to talk to people and we like to build a relationship. So we thought, okay, maybe this is a place where people could come and let us know what they're doing, and then we can share that with the wider world. So we're hoping that in the next couple of years we'll have 10,000 publications in here and not just 674. All you need to do to get into here is to go to the register link, you create an account, and then you have to go in and just add your publication. You use the Open Archives initiative URL. I won't get too technical, don't worry. But you use that OAI URL that's part of OJS, and it automatically pulls in all of your content. You don't have to add article by article by article. It's a very automated process. You can just take a look at one of these. Just going to browse. This is still fairly basic index. We're hoping to add more functionality to it over time. We're using another open source platform we have, the Open Harvesting Systems software. So you could set up your own index if you were so inclined, or you could just take advantage of this one. But let's take a look at Pensamiento, Palabra y Obra. We can browse the records. And there's the titles, the author. And that hasn't been added article by article. That's been, the system just pulls that content in. There's links back to the original so that people will come here, they'll find out about your journal, then they'll click on the link to the original, they'll go back to your site, and then your usage statistics will get elevated. So take a look at that. Consider signing up for that. That would be helpful. The next one that I wanted to talk about is the PKP PLN, which stands for a private locks network. How many people here are familiar with locks? You heard of locks before? A few of you. It stands for, this is English, lots of copies, keep stuff safe. The idea behind this was that in the print world, when you make a journal, you create print copies, you give it out to your subscribers, individuals as well as libraries. Copies of your journal are all around the world. Libraries at UNAM have copies, libraries in Canada have copies, libraries in the US have copies. Great. And if something happens to one of those libraries, if that library burns down and its copies are gone, that's okay. Well, it's not okay, it's tragic. But for the journal, for preservation, that's okay, because they can get another copy from another library because there are lots of copies. In the digital world, what was happening was you would have an online journal and they would make their files, they would make their articles available on the internet, but there was really only one copy sitting on their one server. And if their server had something go wrong, whether it was the library burned down and the server was in there, or if there was some kind of a hack to that server, some kind of a problem, and it was wiped out, that was it. There was really only that one copy. There weren't lots of copies. So a project started at Stanford University several years ago to create some open source software, again, to help solve this problem. And what happens basically is not just one copy of that digital file is made, but multiple copies are made and they're shared. So if something happens to one server, another server can pick it up. But there was an issue with that that we realized sort of more recently. To participate in locks, you can't just sort of click the box in OJS that says, yes, I want to be in locks. You also have to join a network. And different universities will set up a network, or different organizations will set up networks, but journals need to apply to be part of those networks. And we had many journals using OJS who were ticking the box, but they weren't joining a network. So nothing was happening, but they thought they were being preserved. And that was terrible news for us to realize there was that miscommunication. So we talked to some of the journals and said, well, you need to join a network. And they said, well, where? There is no network for us to join. There would be costs for some networks, or other networks were closed only to journals from their institution. So we worked with the people at Locks to set up a PKP-specific network. And it's called private, but that's not a good term. It's private in that if you're not using OJS, you can't use it. But for anybody who's using OJS, you can join our Locks network and you can be part of this digital preservation system. And again, it's free. It's not anything you have to pay for. At the heart of any Locks network are the nodes, or the different locations that are hopefully spread out geographically. Right now we've got about 9 nodes. You can see there's some in Western Canada, there's some in the Eastern United States, one in the Netherlands, and one in Italy. We're looking for more nodes. So if we don't have a Latin American node, a third of our journals are in Latin America, it would be great to have a Latin American node. UNAM seems like a great place to be a node. I'll just put that out there. That just means that you would set up a server somewhere at your university that would be dedicated to being part of this system. And basically what happens is all of these nodes, all of these servers continually talk to each other and are continually making copies, so that when a journal changes at one location, everybody's informed of those changes. And if that journal suddenly goes dark, you know, the server crashes, all of the other 8 nodes have copies. And it's all automated. Nobody's having to go in there and, you know, do work. Oh, this one's just published a new issue. We have to go and update it. It's all automated. Right now, I think we only have about 250 journals in there. Again, here's my advertising pitch, but at no cost to you. We hope that you'll consider adding your journal to this preservation system. Many of you may be aware of the Directory of Open Access Journals, the DOAJ. It's really the most important index for open access journals. And they've been starting to make it more rigorous to be included in the DOAJ. And one of the things the DOAJ is asking is that you have some kind of a digital preservation system for your journal. Here's the answer, if you didn't have an answer to that question before. So how it works, the first step is registration. Now I should mention you need to be on the latest version of OJS, not 3. You don't have to be on the super new one, but you need to be on, I think, 2.4.8, which was the latest version in that 2 line. And it's very simple. There's a plugin that you turn on. It asks you to agree to some simple terms. You know, I have the right to contribute this material into this network. Save, you're done. That's it. It's really easy. Once you've made that save, your content will be visible to our locks network, and your content will be pulled in. It's all in a dark archive. It's not visible. It's shared privately, and it continues to get harvested whenever you make a new issue, and it just keeps pulling it in, and sharing it around and sharing it around. The final piece are trigger events. That's when something bad happens. The system's constantly looking for activity on your journal, and if for 2 years nothing happens, it'll let us know, okay, there's something going wrong with this journal. Maybe it's gone offline, and then we could make it visible. Or you could also tell us, you know what, we're done with this trigger event, and that would make the content visible to the world. So it's very automated, very simple to use, but it does provide you with that preservation system that's so important in the world of online publishing now. So yeah, 2.4.8. It's not in OJS 3 yet. We're working on it. It'll be there by the end of the year. You have to have an ISSN. I'm sure you all have ISSNs, right? Nod. Yep, you've all signed up for ISSNs. Good. And you have to have published at least one article. We don't want to pull in empty OJS installations. It needs to have at least one article published. Let's take a look at this. I can show you what it looks like. This is an OJS installation at the University of British Columbia. And this is C also. This is a student journal at the library school there. And I work with them. I'm an adjunct faculty member there, and I'm working with the students to publish online. So very familiar OJS. I'm glad that password worked. I'd forgotten that I was going to log into this. So I'm going to go into my role as a journal manager. You've seen this before if you've used OJS. I'm going to go to plugins. Plugins is something that we're working on making easier to use in OJS 3. Bear with me for this OJS 2. Generic plugins. And if you scroll through that list of generic plugins, you will see, there it is, the PKP PLN plugin. It needs to be enabled. Find it now that I've enabled it. There it is. And then go to settings. I won't actually do this. That identifier that's showing was automatically generated, nothing you need to do. There's some terms as the primary contact, I in good faith, blah, blah, blah. Oh, let me just get that. Oh, somebody went in and did this. They already, basically what you should see, imagine, if you will, just a list of statements with checkboxes. You know, I agree that I have the right to do this. I agree that I've published something. Check, check. You hit save, and that's it. You can walk away. Nothing else that you need to do. Your content is now going to get pulled into the PLN and be preserved. So make sure you're on the latest version. Go into your plugins and set this up. That would be, we'd love to have you be part of it, and that would allow you to be, you know, confident that you're in a, you know, a fully operational digital preservation system. Some of the emerging functionality that we're working on now that I think you'll be interested in are in areas of ORCID, Hypothesis, another project that we're interoperating with, a new system that we're working on, an open typesetting stack, and article level metrics. And we'll go through each of these briefly. ORCID for author identification. How many people have heard of ORCID before? A few of you? Great, good, good. Basically, it's just, again, this is a nonprofit system where you create an account and it creates a unique record of you as an author. This is important, you know, it's not important when you've got a unique name. There's not very many Kevin Stranicks in the world. In fact, I'm the only one. I know everybody who's got that last name, and there's none of them have my first name. But imagine that my name was John Smith. Right. That's more challenging. How do you know it was this John Smith that wrote that article from that John Smith that wrote that article? The goal of ORCID is to create a unique identifier for every author. It's free. Again, this isn't something you have to pay for. You get a code, a number that is your series of numbers, and that's always you. And then around that, different kinds of functionality are being developed to interoperate with other systems. Let's see if this will work. I've got a little demo here.
Hi, this is Alex Smetcher from the Public Knowledge Project. Today, I'm going to give a short demonstration of basic ORCID integration with open journal systems.
No, the sound isn't working very well. I'll turn the sound off and I'll narrate it as it goes along. This is our lead developer, just showing how he's been working with some of our other developers to have ORCID integration into the next version of OJS. Here it comes. Watch for this. This is OJS 3. This is a little sneak preview of what I'm going to show you later when we look at OJS 3. He's on his way, so he's going to register. So he's never, imagine this is a person who's never registered before. There's a little ORCID button at the top of the registration page. He presses that. It opens up an ORCID window. You can sign in with your ORCID ID that you've previously created with ORCID. There he goes. Says OK. And it might be hard to see, but the fields have filled in. It's pulled in his name and his email address from ORCID. So your users can use that ORCID ID to log in. Then they sort of fill in the rest of the form. But OJS will have saved that ID, and so any publications that that author does are associated with that account. So it's a really nice way to be able to ensure that that John Smith isn't that John Smith. And we're going to see a lot more of that kind of ORCID work coming about. And this is a great way for you to get involved with that. Another one is hypothesis. Stop that. Wasn't ready for that yet. How many people have heard of hypothesis? Maybe not as many. Hypothesis is, it's a separate open source project. We don't do it. There's another group that develops Hypothesis. But Hypothesis is working on tools to have online annotation and commenting for any website. And you can create an account with Hypothesis. And then when you go to a website, enable your account, you'll be given little tools to highlight. And then you can highlight any web page. You're in a newspaper that you're reading online. You can then highlight that through Hypothesis, and you can even add comments. And you can make those comments private, so only you can see them. They're just for your personal use. But you can also choose to make those comments public, so that anybody could read them, and you could potentially have an online conversation about that web page. So we're trying to build that tool into OJS now. We've got a working plugin. Let me show you what that looks like. Again, I won't use the sound. I'll just narrate it here. So again, we're on an article page. We open up the PDF. Or what's he going to do first? Because of the Hypothesis plugin, he's highlighting. He can choose annotate or highlight. Then he can read his annotations. He could see other people's public annotations on that PDF. So one of the things we're hoping to do with Hypothesis is to have a better commenting system. We weren't happy with the commenting system that's in OJS 2, and rather than us trying to put all the work into making a separate one, we want to work with other people who are focusing their attention on this. So this is going to replace commenting. Oh, he's going to show you in the PDF as well. But we're also interested in how this might facilitate open review and post-publication peer review. If you can have people in your community who sign up for Hypothesis, make comments that are public on your PDFs or your HTML pages, they can give those kinds of open review comments. And then, if you're working in an open review environment, the author could make revisions based on that. So it's a tool that we're pretty excited about. The Hypothesis people are great to work with. So that's something else to watch out for coming up. Open typesetting stack. This is great. We've been working on this for a long time. The idea behind the open typesetting stack is to create open source software, or to take components of open source software, bundle them together to allow for automated documentation conversion. One of the challenges that so many of our journals have said to us is, our authors submit a Word document. It's completely unstructured. They're just putting in the titles. They're putting in the abstracts. They're not styling it or using any of those advanced Word features. And the only thing we can do with that, the only thing we have time to do is save as PDF and publish that. Right? And we know that there's limitations to the PDF. It doesn't look good on a phone. It doesn't look very good on a tablet. We'd love to have HTML, we'd love to have XML, but we just don't have the people who know how to take a Word document and make it into XML. It's just outside of what we could afford or what our team can do. So what we're trying to do is to build a system that you could upload a Word document and it would export automatically XML, HTML, PDF, EPUB, all of those formats that you want. At this point, this is still in the research stage, although we've been working on this for a couple of years. We're at about 80%. So if you upload a Word document, take a look at the XML that came out the other side. About 80% of it's right, about 20% of it needs to be fixed up. So we're also working on a web-based editor, so you don't need to know XML to fix it up. You could just view the text on the page, make the changes, and save it. And then behind the scenes, the XML is that editor to fix up that remaining 10 or 5% very easily. Let me just show you a little bit of that. This is the demo site where you would just log in, create an account and log in. If anybody's interested in playing with this, send me an email. I can share the URL with you. It's an open demonstration. So I've uploaded a Word document, originally titled document.doc. It goes into the queue. It can take up to 20 minutes, half an hour for it to process. But once it's finished, it exports all of these files. It's hard for you to see in the back there, but it's got the Word document again, but then it's got document.bib. So it's taken the bibliography and created a .bib file for those references. It's also gone out and found the crossref, the DOIs for all of those, and automatically added those where they're available. It's created the HTML files, it's created the EPUB, the PDF, all the HTML files, and the XML file automatically. For those XML geeks in the audience, here's what the XML comes out looking like. It's JATS XML, which comes out of the National Library of Medicine in the United States. It's increasingly becoming the standard for journal article XML. You can use something like the Lens reader, and this is how the XML is displayed when a reader goes to see it. It gives you the content in the left panel, and it gives you the headings that are all linked in the right panel. This is what the HTML looks like coming out of it. Of course, you could modify the style sheet to have it look however you want. Whoops, went too far. So we're really excited about this. We think this is really going to allow OJS journals to move beyond the PDF. The PDF has served us well for many years. Many people still really like the PDF. It prints nicely. If you're still wanting to, if you've got an audience of readers who still want to print and reproduce that, paper sense. But for others who are interested in reading it online, who are interested in reading it on mobile devices, this is really going to make the experience of reading much easier, much more effective. So we're hoping to have a beta release of this by the end of the year, where you'll be able to play with it even more. Like I said, those percentages will be up a little bit higher and ready for production sometime in 2017. So, you know, keep an eye on the PKP website, and we'll continue to publish progress reports on our blog. The next one is article level metrics. How many people have heard of article level metrics, or are familiar with that? A couple of people? Okay. How many people have heard of impact factor? Yeah, more hands go up for that. Impact factor was, you know, comes out of the print world on how do you determine how important a journal is? How much impact does that journal have? There's a couple of issues with impact factor. You have to be in the Thomson Reuters system to even be able to participate in that. And it's a measurement of how many citations that articles in that journal have had. And there's a calculation that gives you a number. And the more that journal gets cited, the higher its impact factor is. And that number, strangely enough, is often used in things like tenure and promotion decisions. So if you're up for tenure, and if you've published in lots of journals with high impact factor, that's considered, okay, that's good, right? You must be a good scholar. It seems odd because it's kind of a proxy, because it's not actually measuring your work. It's measuring the work of people around you, and thus by association you must be due for this promotion. So we kind of thought, you know, it's 2016. There must be a better way of doing this, with content being online, citations increasingly being online, there being more systems than just Thomson Reuters. And that's where the concept of article level metrics comes from. Let's try to measure the impact of an article that someone has written as opposed to the journal that it's in. There's a few different commercial systems that are doing this now. You might have heard of Altmetrics. That's out there doing a great job of this. Plum Analytics is another one that's out there and doing it. And we've written some plugins that allow you to interoperate with Plum Analytics. We've been talking with the folks at Altmetrics about a plugin for OJS that would work with their system. But one of the problems with that is it's a commercial service. You have to pay for it. And a lot of our journals, again, getting back to the sustainability of open access, just don't have the money to pay those systems, you know, an annual fee to have article level metrics. Again, back to research, we've been in the research phase of seeing, well, what can we do at the Public Knowledge Project to make this kind of technology available to our journals without them having to spend money to do it. Still a work in progress. We don't have anything to show yet, but it is something that we know we're making some progress on. Crossref, you may know from DOIs, is working on a system that's going to be an open system. PLOS, the Public Library of Science, is working on a system that's open as well. So we've been in communications with both of them to see how we can adapt their article level metric system to OJS. Still working it out. We've got a partner at the University of Alberta up in Canada that's interested in this. They've got their developers on it helping us. So I can't show you anything yet, but I wanted to flag it just as something that's in the work. Still in that research phase, but it's going to be moving over to the software development stage, probably sometime in 2017. So again, keep an eye out, and we'll keep you updated about when this might be ready for your journals. This is a very simple example of how we tried to do usage statistics. These are just the downloads of an article. You can see in July it had almost 250. In August it had about 280. And in October it's just had about 10 or 15. So very rudimentary, but trying to show, okay, this is a measurement of that article's performance. And this would appear on the OJS public page for that article. And what our goal is to start getting other measurements in there, like how many times has it been retweeted in Twitter? How many times has it been liked in Facebook? How many times has it been added to a Zotero bibliography? All of those kinds of open web tools and indicators that are becoming increasingly important in measuring what scholarly impact is actually all about. Community support. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is where I spend a lot of my time working. And I wanted just to highlight some tools that we've been updating and improving that you may not be aware of. One is our forum. The other is documentation, something called the PKP School, and some of our committees and interest groups. The community forum, that's the URL there, forum.pkp.sfu.ca. Again, this is a free service. Anybody can sign up. And if you've got questions, you can post a question there, and our developers or people in the community will answer your questions. There's a showcase. If you just want to show off how great your journal is, put it in there and share it with the world. Put it in the index too, but you can also show it off here. We've been really working to upgrade our documentation, to bring it into one place, make it easier to use, easier to find. We've been using a free service called Gitbook. For people out there who are using Git for software development, it's a really nice system for version control, so that when you make a change to your software, you still have the older version and you can always revert back. This works the same way for documentation, so there can be multiple versions. So you make all, we've worked on all the documentation for OJS 2.4.8. Great, that's saved. When 2.4.9 comes along, you can have a new version, but the old one is saved. It also works really well for translation, so that when it's translated into Spanish, for example, there can be a Spanish version, there can be a Portuguese version, a French version. So it really facilitates that kind of versioning, and it's open for people to sign up and to be contributors, so we can get people involved in helping to keep the software or the documentation up to date. Again, all freely available. PKP School, a set of online courses for using OJS. OJS for journal managers, OJS for editors, also editorial skills, reviewer skills, authoring. So a number of courses there. One of my tasks when I get back from vacation is to start working on the OJS 3 courses. Everything is still on the 2 line, so watch for those courses coming out later this year. And we've got various committees and community groups that participate in all of these activities as well. We've got the PKP Document Interest Group with folks from around the world who are helping us with the documentation. We're going to be setting up an education interest group. Again, when I get back and can get that out, people are interested in working on the online courses. If you've got a desire to volunteer, spend some time helping to make this stuff better for everybody, I'd really welcome your participation. And I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes to talk about this current research project that we're working on around open access publishing cooperatives. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've really moved from the point of having to justify open access to putting more of our energy into determining how we're going to sustain it. One of the reasons that there are subscriptions and paywalls is because somebody needs to, come up with the money to be able to do all of the editorial activities that you're involved in. A lot of it's done by volunteer effort, but there is also a need to have some kind of a revenue stream in for keeping your journal running. Subscriptions did that in the past, but are there some new ways of doing it? We're seeing in the commercial publishing world the rise of article processing charges, APCs, where the authors pay a fee to have their article made openly available. That's been working all right within the scientific community, primarily biomed, where there are large grants, and you can make part of your grant go towards your article processing charge. In the humanities and social sciences, not so much. There aren't as many grants that allow you to pay the $1,500, $3,000, $5,000 fees sometimes. Within the budgets of universities in South America, Central America, Mexico, often there's not those kinds of funds as well. And it's just been an undue burden and threatens to, again, divide the journals in Europe, North America from the journals in Latin America, Africa, Southern Asia from participating in a global scholarly communication system. So we really wanted to spend some time figuring out, well, what other ways could open access be sustained? And so we got a grant from the MacArthur Foundation to fund a 2-year project to explore whether cooperatives would be a feasible way to proceed. That's the URL for the project. That's the project's homepage, and we've got information there about it. Essentially what it comes down to is right now, within the scholarly publishing system, there's about $12 billion circulating through the system between granting agencies providing money, libraries providing subscription fees, authors paying those article processing charges. $12 billion in the system should be more than enough money to fund full open access. So what we're trying to do is seeing if we can find communities of publishers, journals, scholarly societies, along with libraries that are still willing to pay. They just want to pay a reasonable amount for this stuff, and funding agencies, and see if they can come together, form a cooperative to keep the money within their system and share it amongst those journals equitably, keeping the costs for libraries at a sustainable rate, but providing a sustainable source of revenue for the journals. We've got a couple of case studies that we're working on. One is in anthropology, where we're working with a group of anthropology journals who are coming together in a cooperative and then are going to be approaching libraries to provide them with funding to support their work. Scope 3 might be something you've heard of in physics, where they've done this. A group of journals in that area got together, went out to libraries and sold memberships basically, as opposed to subscriptions. So it's similar in that sense. Within Canada, we're working on a case study for this right now, where we're bringing together representatives of the journals and the scholarly societies, along with the libraries and our national and a provincial funding agency, to have conversations about, okay, let's keep spending at a sustainable rate, not having the ever-increasing inflationary rate that we've seen, but stabilizing costs. But journals also knowing that they've got a regular source of income to sustain what they're doing and their important work that doesn't have to come from subscriptions, and they can make everything openly available with that kind of support. The libraries we've talked to are all enthusiastically on board with this. They're more than willing to continue to pay a fee to support scholarship. They just want it to be a sustainable fee, and they want it to be a justifiable fee that's actually based on costs, not based on what the market will bear, which what we see a lot of in the article processing charge environment. Funders are interested, and journals are interested, but at this point still a little bit skeptical of how this would work. So we're spending some time having conversations with journals, letting them know how this would work, how their revenue stream would be sustained, how to mitigate the risks of basically canceling your subscriptions, all your subscribers, to rely on libraries to replace that income. Lots of conversation, lots of talking about risk, lots of talking about organization, but we're confident that this is really going to be an important new way to sustain open access. Again, we publish about this on our blog, so if you're interested, go to the website, but also just keep an eye on the PKP website, and we'll continue to keep that updated. OJS 3, that's what we wanted to talk about. Yeah, gee, I thought he'd never talk about that. But think about how enriching that background was. Our goals with OJS 3 and moving from the 2 line to 3 really come around 3 main areas. We wanted it to be more flexible. One of the things that we heard from a lot of folks who were using it, were continuing to publish with it, was, it kind of makes you do things one way. And we don't really want to do things that way. We'd like to change how we do things. And it wasn't always easy to do it in the software. So we've tried to build in a lot more flexibility, and I'll show you some of that when we open it up. Hopefully we've succeeded there. We wanted to make it responsive, which, if you're not familiar with that term, so that it works on different screen sizes. OJS 2 works great on a laptop, on a desktop. You open it up on your Android phone, your iPhone, not so much. Not a great experience. And again, it's 2016. Websites need to work on mobile devices. And The OJS2 platform was just not up to the task of moving easily over to a responsive environment. That was another major goal of this upgrade. And the final one was themability. We wanted to make it easier to customize how your journal looks while keeping it attractive, responsive, accessible. So there's been a lot of work that's been going on in that. So you can be the judge. Let's take a look at this. This is the journal that I use for usability testing. So there's lots of content in here that we can poke around in. This is what it looks like out of the box with some content. It's a very simple theme. We just wanted to have something very basic, kind of like WordPress. If people have worked with WordPress, when you install WordPress, it's got a fine theme. It doesn't knock anybody's socks off, but it's a good platform to start this idea of theming. So this is the basic theme. As you can see, there's a lot of familiar elements. You know, you can register and log in up at the top. Along the taskbar, there's announcements, current, your archives, your back issues, and your about pages. You can have a sidebar along the side. It's still multilingual, as it always has been. Information for your readers and the authors. Scrolling down a little bit, we've got the current issue on this page. We can see links to PDF. If I open that up, it displays the PDF. Come on, come on. Opportunity to take a drink. I usually blame this on Wi-Fi, but I'm sure this is a fast connection. Here it comes. There it is. Okay, a PDF. And up at the top, there's just some buttons that let you download it or go back. The XML button, I showed you a hint of this, that if you're able to create an XML version, it will open up that lens reader. And gives a very nice display with the content on this side and the various sections that it moves you down to on this side. And if you're reading this on a phone, it all sizes down really nicely. And you can imagine those hypothesis tools being there for highlighting, annotating, all part of that. So it's not, it's still got all the components that you would expect from a journal page. You know, it's still got your articles, it's still got the links to the content, but it's got this responsiveness built in. I can even, I'm going to shrink it, and you can see now how the search bar has changed. Sort of on a tablet. If I go even smaller, get down to phone size, everything wraps nicely, and it all fits on the page and organizes it all. So responsiveness was just key because we knew people are going to want to be reading this stuff online, on their phones, I should say. So let me just log in here. I'll give you an editor's view of what's going on. One of the things you'll notice right away is that the back end looks completely different than the front end. And this was a major change for us. We made that change for a couple of reasons. That issue of themability, to make the reader front end easier to customize, is facilitated by doing this, because now you only have a few style sheet calls to think about. You only have a few templates that might be impacted. So there's much less of the system you're interacting with when you want to make your reader front end customized. So that's a really nice separation, just to make that theming easier. The other thing that this does is it gives everyone a consistent experience in the back end. So if I'm an author at this OJS journal and I'm a reviewer at that OJS journal, and I'm an editor over here at that other OJS journal, it always looks the same in the back. Right now with OJS 2, people could customize the whole thing, and it would often be kind of different depending on where you went. So this makes a more sort of consistent user experience on the back end. Some things you'll see, some of the things that we're working in OJS 2 are still here, and some of the things that we had feedback on changing have been added here. I should show you right away the Help tab. This is always a good place to go, right on the side over here. And if you click on that, a little Help panel opens up, and that still is directly focused on the page that you're on. But you can also scroll through, and you can take a look at the table of contents for the full help files that are all there. We can see that there's a sidebar going along here. I'm logged in as an editor. I've got 14 tasks that are awaiting my attention. If I click on that, they all open up on the side. Oop, my wrapping's not working. Don't look at that. But I can see things that need attention right now. They can be, a new article has been submitted, a review has come in, the copier editor has completed their work. So it very quickly lets you know as an editor, as soon as you log in, I've got 14 things to do. Or, hopefully you've got one to go in, and you can deal with that right away. But you don't have to be searching through this. What's next? What do I need to think about? This is the submissions page that we're on right now. I can see that there's 3 that have come in that are unassigned. So these are new submissions. And they're all in that submission stage. So they're all new. Much like with OJS 2, when the author made the submission, the system sent them a thank you email. That still happens. We've still tried to automate those kinds of common communications. If I scroll down, I can see my assigned. So I'm the editor, and these ones are actually on my plate to deal with. Maybe I've got some other editors. They've got other ones that are assigned to them. So this is really the focus of your work. And you can see they're in a range of different stages. This one is still in review. This one is still in production. That one's been published, but there was a problem with the issue, and we have to go back and review it. And 2 more in production. So at a glance, you can see where they are in the workflow. And further down, there's some that I've actually authored for this journal, so they're just some tests. One of them is even incomplete, so I can very quickly see that I started that one, I got distracted, I need to go back to fix that up. So I want to take a look at one of these just to give you a sense of what the different stages look like. I'm going to go into this one that's in production. Clicking on that production link takes me to the record for that submission. Just going to jump back here to submission. This is similar to OJS 2, but there are some changes. There's 4 publication stages that you need to take the submission through. Submission is where it's first come in. Then it goes through review. Then it'll go through copy editing, where any changes are made to the revised version. And then it goes into production, where your PDFs are made, you make your HTML, your XML. And we can take a look at each of those in turn briefly. What you'll see typically at every stage are some files at the top. So this is labeled submission files right up here. And that's basically the inbox. These have come in. So this is what's just come in from the author making a submission. And you're always going to have that copy of it like you had in the old version. And then this is new. We've added something called discussions. So these are pre-review discussions. So instead of sending an email or somehow communicating with the author, maybe even outside of the system, you can add what's called a discussion with anybody who's involved with this record. So we can see here there was a discussion called test. If I click on that, it opens it up, and it was a message that I sent that just says test. So that wasn't very illuminating, but you can imagine that I take a look at this submission file, and I've got a question for the author before I even want to move it on to review. It's like, okay, this actually seems to be missing something. Like you've said, that you've referred to this table, and I can't find that table. You can have a discussion with the author, right away. The author gets an email letting them know there's a discussion, but there's this record that gets maintained, and that's what's really important here, is that you can very quickly at a glance see the conversations that have happened around this, this submission. Over on the side here are some multicolored action buttons. Send to review, send to copy editing, decline the submission. Those action buttons will change at each stage, but they're sort of the area that you're working towards. You need to make some kind of a major decision. This is where you'll make that selection. And down below that is what we call a participants list. These are the people who are involved with this record. So I'm there as the journal editor, Daniel Barnes, who I'm impersonating. There's 2 section editors that have been pulled into this for different reasons, and then the author is listed here as well. As we move through the process, we'll add copy editors, we'll add layout editors. This is some of the flexibility I was talking about, though. You can add anybody who's registered with the journal to work on this record. Maybe you don't use layout editors. Maybe you use production assistants. Well, you can pull in a production assistant. Maybe you skip copy editing altogether. You can skip that stage. So that's sort of the area of flexibility we've tried to build in. If we jump over to review, we can see right away we were in round 1 and it was accepted because this one's already done. But there are the review files. Again, that's that inbox. Okay, these are the files that we're going to send to the reviewers. If I'd made any changes in that previous stage as the editor, these would now be showing up here. So I'm ready to really focus on that set of files. We can see we had 2 reviewers working on it. We can see they're both overdue. Terrible. I could use that link to send them reminders. The system still has the automated reminders that it had in the 2.x system. I could add another reviewer if I wanted to by clicking there. We've got a separate box for revisions so that when the author's been given some feedback, they've been told to upload a revision based on that feedback, you can see it there. So everything tries to get, is more visible, I think, than it was in the past, especially in that area of revisions. And you can have some review discussions. So if the editor wants to ask a question of the reviewer, you could do it in this discussion, and it's, again, that record is maintained. The reviews themselves don't happen in the discussions because this is a double-blind system. They are so private. Those, continue to happen internally to the system, much like with OJS2. Jump over to copy editing. So imagine that the author had made their revisions. The revisions were accepted. I hit, okay, send to copy editing. Now I've got my draft files. Those have been revised. Those are ready now for the next stage of copy editing. I would add a copy editor. We can see down here, Maria Fritz is now the copy editor, and I added her just simply by clicking the add link. It's very straightforward. Maria takes those files, does her copy editing. Once she's finished, she uploads them to copy edited. So that sense of, here's my inbox, my draft files that I need to work with. I can have a discussion in the middle. Maybe I've made some copy edits and I want to run them past the author. You can do that in the discussions. And then once I'm happy with the final version, I upload it to copy edited, and that stage is done. As an editor, I can say, okay, those look good, and I can hit my action button, send to production, and it moves it to the next stage. Same idea. This is my inbox, my production ready files. So these have all been revised by the author. They've been copy edited by the copy editor. They're ready to be made into my galley files, my PDFs, my HTML. I can add a layout editor here, or as I said, if it's a production assistant, you can add anybody and then use a discussion to have a conversation with them. Galley's ready for production. Oh, I didn't add a subject to that. You can communicate with the layout editor, with the section editors, with the authors. Anybody you want to have a conversation with who's part of this record can be included in here. Again, that's some of the flexibility. You decide who works on this. It's up to you. And then the galleys, you simply add galley, and upload the PDF. This is very simple, but you would upload your XML, upload your HTML. Pretty much like you did in OJS2. And then I can use my action button to schedule it for production. That's where I add that PDF to an issue, probably up to a future issue, to the next issue that's coming up, wherever you want to put it. That's basically how the workflow works. That's how that flexibility has been built in. One of the things that I want to show you that I'm really sort of happy about is that I'm logged in as an editor, right? And I've been working with the content, the submission file as we work through it. But imagine that I want to make a change to the website. I want to change something on one of the pages. In OJS2, I'm logged in as an editor, right? And then I have to go to my user home, go to Journal Manager, go to that user home, and now I can make those changes. That's all eliminated now. I've got permissions that have been given to me as an editor, but also as a Journal Manager. I don't have to swap between those roles. All of my settings are visible to me. I'm working in content here, happily, working, good. That looks great. Oh, settings, I jump over to Journal Settings, and that's all it takes now to work on my masthead. No jumping between. So hopefully that's going to save you, those seconds of time that are just annoying and just don't really make any sense anymore. You can see in the settings, there's the journal settings where you can change your masthead, change your contact information, change the sections. A big change we've made is to simplify the masthead. For those of you who ever created the masthead in your OJS journal for your editorial team, you would have to use a bunch of configuration options to create the titles, add the person's account under that title, create another title. It was very complex. We've replaced that with a text box. You can just put in whatever titles you want. It's just HTML. There's some WYSIWYG tools here to make them bold. But it just made sense to simplify it. We've tried to do that in a number of areas where there were kind of overly complicated ways of adding sponsors, adding your sources of support. We've just replaced those with text boxes. Similarly on About the Journal, there's not separate boxes for your open access policy, your copy editing policy, your licensing policy. You can put in there whatever you want. So it gives you a lot more flexibility on how you display that information, but also makes it simpler just to work with the system. Settings are broken down into 4 different areas. The journal, which we just saw. The website, and that's where you can modify the appearance, adding footers, adding a logo. This is where you can change a theme. Right now there's just the default theme, which is that blue one. But this is where we're working to try to create a bit of a community of themes, much like you see in things like WordPress and Drupal, where people will create some themes and share them, and then you'd be able to upload them and add them here. You can add a homepage image, additional content. This is similar to what you've got now. Information, that's those 4 readers, 4 librarians, if you want to change that. Archiving, this is where right now it's just sort of that old click a button for locks and you're on your own. When OJS 3 has the PLN we were talking about earlier, this is where you'll be able to get to that plugin more quickly rather than hunting through all the plugins. If you've got multiple languages, if you want to do English and Spanish, this is where you can activate those. This is the list of all the plugins. We're working on something called a plugin gallery, much like in, again, WordPress and Drupal, where community members can contribute a plugin, and then you'd be able to view them through there, and then you'll be able to rate them. Yeah, this is a good one. This one works with this version, not that version. So, really trying to make that more useful. And this is where you can set up your announcements. Workflow. Again, this is just where you can make some changes to how the workflow works for you. Components is something new that we've added. The way OJS 2 works right now, when an author makes a submission, they upload like a main file, right? Like they upload their Word document, and then later they'll be asked, oh, do you have any supplementary files? And those are kind of like second-class citizens of files. We've changed it now so that the author can upload multiple main files at once. They could upload their Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, some images, maybe a separate Word document that's got some, some figures in it, whatever they want. But what they do need to do is they need to say, well, what kind of a file is this? And when they upload it, they're given a drop-down that says, is it article text, which is like the body? Is it a research instrument? Is it research materials? Are they research results? Are they transcripts? And they would pick from that. But you, as the editor of the journal, can change what the author sees. So you can add your own components, or you can delete these too. If some of these don't make sense and your authors are just like, transcripts, what? We never do that. You can just go in here and delete it. So again, there's that flexibility that we're trying to build in to make this easier for you to make it match what you need. Distribution, just your search engine indexing, how people can access the site. Some people want to, will continue to want to have subscriptions. We haven't fully built out the subscription module. Open access is our focus and has been the focus on OJS 3, but we are going to be working with some others in the community to help us develop subscriptions. So if you do have some journals that you're working with that continue to have a paywall, OJS 3 doesn't have it yet, but we'll have it sometime early 2017, and those settings will be available here. Payments, the same as was in OJS 2, you can use PayPal for subscriptions, but also if you wanted to take donations, other kinds of membership fees can be collected, and all that financial information is stored in PayPal. None of it is on the system, so you don't have any of that sort of financial security to worry about. And permissions, your copyright notice can be added here. But we've added some things to be more specific about, well, who is the copyright holder? Do you allow the author to maintain copyright, which is becoming increasingly common in open access journals? And what's your license type? And you can pick from a series of Creative Commons licenses, or say other, if you're doing a more traditional license. But we really wanted to highlight the importance of thinking about Creative Commons and how you license your content. Let me show you one more area that's interesting. I can abandon that. And this is in users and roles. So I'm on the users tab right now, and you can see all of the users that are in the system. But if I go to roles, we've really expanded and changed the way that roles work in OJS 3. There's more roles, so you can see there's new things like guest editor that wasn't there before, designer, funding coordinator. Much like with those components, you can go in and delete these. If you're just never going to use that role type, you can just get rid of it, and you don't even have to think about it. But it does give you that option to give people more specific roles. The other thing you can do is you can change the name. If Journal Manager doesn't make sense in your context, you can go in and edit it and change it to, Journal Boss. You can call it whatever you call it at your publishing shop. These are flexible now. You can change it. But you can also add new roles. You can create a brand new role that doesn't exist in here. You can use these checkboxes to say, do they have access to the submission stage, the review stage, the copy editing stage, the production stage? You can say, no, you can just never go to that page. And you can also say, well, should they have full rights, like a journal manager? Should they have just editorial rights, like a journal editor? Or should they have only limited rights, like an editorial assistant, and they can only see the copy editing stage? So they'd be able to go in and look at the files, but they can't make major changes. So you've got a lot more control over the kinds of roles that you want to have too. That's, again, some of the requests for flexibility that we got from the system. Yeah, just under tools, that's import, export, and some statistics. These are pretty much what you saw in OJS 2. Statistics is where we're really hoping to expand on those article level metrics that I showed you earlier that are still part of research. Let me just go back. Here. We've tried to make a few things simpler as well. We've tried to make the registration simpler. You may have noticed, or you may have gotten feedback from some people using your journal that when they register, they were asked an awful lot of questions. And many of those questions weren't required, but it was still a really long, kind of intimidating form. We've broken it into sort of two separate areas. So on initial registration, you only have a couple of questions: first name, last name, email, things like that, and then you're registered. And you can go back later, and you can go to a profile page, and then you can fill out all the details that you want. So there's my identity, my contact information, what roles I have. We're working on this concept of a public page where I would add an image, I would add my biography statement, I can have my ORCID ID, which is manual right now, but will be automated once we have the plugin working. And then you could have author pages, so that when somebody comes to your website, they'll see an article, that looks great, here's my authors, click on the name, they actually get a page that describes that person. So it's a nice way for them to promote themselves. It's a nice way to help readers assure credibility. They can see, okay, who is this person? Oh, they're a professor of geography at UNAM. That must be a trustworthy person. To help make things clearer and more visible. One of the concerns that you've probably heard about is predatory publishers in open access, and we're really trying to make sure that Open Journal Systems allows you to show off your credibility. So make sure you're showing your editorial team and linking out to their real pages on real university web pages. This isn't a list of made-up people, but actually linked to where they exist. And that's similar to your authors, too. These are real authors with real identities that are visible on the website. So as much as possible, try to be really transparent with who's on your team and who's writing for your journal. Change your password, change the kinds of notifications you get. There's still a lot of email notifications to let you know when you should log in and do something, but then the work, again, takes place within OJS. So that's the demo. That's what it looks like. That's what you're in for when you upgrade. I hope you got a sense of that flexibility. I hope you got a sense of, how we're trying to make it more themable, and just overall making it a more useful and beneficial experience. Make it feel like you're working in a platform that was written in, 2016 compared to in 2005. Questions? Whew, you made it. I've just put my name up again, and again, I've just repeated my email, my Twitter handle, and PKP's Twitter handle. As I said, if you want to send me messages later, I'm very happy to take messages and talk to you, anytime after this event. But for right now, I'm happy to take any questions that may have come up based on anything we've been talking about now. Yes, please.
Bueno, muy bien.
Shaped my ear, right?
Sí, pasaríamos a las preguntas. No va a haber intermedio, así que si quieren tomarse un café, sería de una vez. Si quieren empezamos, entonces.
Yes, I am Arturo Rivas. I am editor of Investigación Administrativa, which is a management journal. First of all, congratulations for your conference. Thank you very much for staying here, even in your holiday. I have two questions. Is there some certification for be part of logs? This is the one. And the another is there is an ORCID for a journal. I mean, it's an ORCID is for researchers.
Oh,
but,
gotcha. Sure. For locks, no. No, you can just agree to the terms and save, and that's it. There's no certification required. We're just looking that you have an ISSN and that you've published at least one article, and then you're good. That's all. And for ORCID, yes, ORCID is just for the researcher, for the author. That would be your ID. There's not an ORCID for a journal at this point. Yeah.
Gracias, Kevin. ¿Cómo, no sé si, o cómo va a ser la transición o el upgrading de las versiones 2 a la 3? That's all.
That's enough of a question, right there.
Another conference.
Good question. The one thing that you have to do is be up to the 2.4 line. So if you're still running a journal that's on OJS 2.2, 2.3, you need to upgrade to 2.4.8. So get on the latest version of the 2 line, and then you can go in and do the upgrade to the 3 line. And as usual, please, please, please back up your journal. Back up. Get a pen and write it down that I promised Kevin I would back up my journal before I upgraded, because, stuff happens. It's gone really well. We released 3 on August 31st, and our developers have been really busy on the forum, just helping people work out individual server configuration issues, but they've been able to get people upgraded. Sometimes, my PHP version doesn't match. As long as you're meeting the requirements that are listed in the installation page, it looks like it should be fine. If you do run into problems, you're okay because you backed up. But that community forum I showed, that's a great place to just, I'm getting this error message when I upgrade, what's that coming from? And we can usually turn around and answer for you fairly quickly. But yeah, it's gone really well. For us too, it was, okay, this is going to be a major transition for everybody. So we really tried to make the upgrade process as much like the previous one as possible. We weren't sure if there were going to necessarily need to be some additional tools that would help to facilitate that, but it looks like that hasn't been required. So it is very straightforward. Yeah.
Buenos días, Reserva Carrillo de la Revista Mexicana de Sociología. Con relación a la necesidad de financiamiento, me pregunto si PKP pudiese tener un acercamiento con la universidad, la UNAM, porque pues existe un consorcio de varias universidades públicas, las principales del país, en donde pues yo entiendo que hay dinero y podrían apoyarlos a ustedes, porque la política de México, de América Latina, pues es apoyar justamente el acceso abierto. Y la pregunta es esa, si ustedes desde PKP pueden acercarse a las universidades públicas de América Latina, específicamente las de México.
No, that's great, thank you. Yeah, we're very interested in deepening our relationships with places like UNAM in particular that's doing so much work. And if you have connections amongst different universities in Mexico, that would be great for you to build those relationships and then us to be a resource for you. One of the things I'm interested in working on and have been starting to write a bit of a user guide is to setting up local user groups so that you could have local communities. We've got a fairly strong community in Germany amongst different universities there that are using OJS. They're doing software development as well, not just publishing, but also making changes and enhancement to the software. And they've set up a user group where they have conversations about what their priorities are, what they should be working on, but then they work with us as well to talk about the things that they want to do and how that fits in to our plans. And we've learned so much from working with them, and we've made changes to what we were going to do based on what we learned from them. So some kind of a similar user group amongst the universities in Mexico would be very, very good, and we'd really welcome that.
Bueno, pues a propósito de eso, le puedo comentar que al interior de la UNAM, desde hace 3 años aproximadamente, se formó una red de editores que trabajamos en organizar, por ejemplo, esta mesa y otras muchas. Entonces, pues se me ocurre que podríamos iniciar un proyecto de acercamiento a través de la red de editores de la UNAM, que también está integrada por editores del Colegio de México, del CIDE, de la UAM, etcétera. Entonces, pues me gusta eso. Me gustan las relaciones públicas.
Me too. I love it too. And yeah, no, I think that would be really valuable. I think we could really work together and benefit on both sides. I should mention too, we have one of the members of PKP, who's our associate director for research, is Juan Pablo Alperen, who is from Argentina, but he did his doctoral research on open access in Latin America, and he has many relations in Latin America already. He may know some people from UNAM. I'm not sure. You know Juan? Okay. So that would be a great place to build on, is pulling Juan into these, and he speaks Spanish much better than I do.
¿Alguien más?
Mi nombre es Gabriela Arévalo, de la revista Perfiles Educativos de aquí de la UNAM. Bueno, felicidades por la nueva plataforma, sí se ve que han trabajado en las cuestiones de usabilidad mucho, ¿no? Se ve mucho más amable. Es justamente sobre lo que agregaron del pre-review, que es muy bueno para los editores. No teníamos una herramienta, teníamos cuando hacíamos comentarios incluso de una revisión técnica, se tenía que volver a iniciar un nuevo proceso de envío. En este caso, ¿cómo se registra el artículo? Si nosotros le enviamos al autor comentarios antes de que se vaya a la revisión por pares y tiene que modificar el archivo, ¿cómo se registra ese nuevo archivo? O sea, obviamente queda dentro del historial, pero no como una segunda versión revisada, ¿entiendo? ¿O cómo se registra? Esa es una pregunta. Y la otra pregunta que sí me preocupa un poco es este ofrecimiento de, desde el Word pueden hacer PDFs, EPUB, y no sé qué. Yo siempre tengo un poco de escepticismo con eso, porque las versiones que pueden salir de PDF, EPUB, no pueden ser, o bueno, no siempre son en cuestiones de diseño las mejores. Y el XML, por ejemplo, que dices que sale, yo les preguntaría ahorita, la principal preocupación de las revistas en América Latina es tener el XML que necesita Cielo. ¿Ustedes han platicado con Cielo para que ese XML sea el XML que necesita Cielo? ¿Y qué acercamientos pueden tener? Porque aquí está Toño y pueden platicar con él.
Yeah. Okay, that's a few questions. With the peer review discussions, the author can, when you communicate something to the author and the author replies, in both cases you can add file attachments. So if you have a pre-review discussion with the author and say, there is a problem with that Word document you sent me, I want you to send me another copy, they can, when they reply, they can upload the file. And then you would have the new one. And that would be all recorded in the record. And that would go all the way through. So yeah, so you can always go back and see, oh, that was the bad one. Here's when they sent me the revised one. And we can go with that. Yeah, and throughout the whole workflow, there is that editorial history with all of those file versions that are always there. So you need to have those. Yeah, the challenge of automated document conversion. That's why we're still at 80%, because it's hard. And we've got a huge corpus of documents that we're going through and running them through and finding out, oh, it broke here, doesn't do a good job there, revise all the algorithms that try to make it work correctly. It is a huge job. I was skeptical as well as to how far we could get, but I've been really impressed with how far it does come. And because we've built in the web-based editor, we don't have to get it to 100%. Because we're going to put tools in there that are going to give you the opportunity to make those final changes that you don't need to know XML to make those changes. I didn't put a link up or refer to them, but there's another group called Substance. Their website is substance.io, and they are creating online document editing tools, and we're working with them to use Substance to be that web editor. And it looks really good with how you have that WYSIWYG editing of the XML. In terms of Cielo, I know that just in talking with Juan, he's been saying that, we want to work more closely with them, and, continuing sort of to listen to the specific needs that you have. And we've been talking internally about what does Cielo need and what we can do to meet their needs. So that's an ongoing conversation, but it's great to be here. If there's, you say somebody from Cielo is here. Hi. Nice to meet you.
¿Alguien más?
Hola, Kevin, de la revista Investigaciones Geográficas Diana. Una pregunta, bueno, aquí en la UNAM existen como 2 niveles de uso de OJS. Las revistas que ya lo estamos usando en nuestro proceso editorial completo y las revistas que solo lo están usando como repositorio, solamente para publicar. Respecto a las revistas que lo estamos usando desde hace varios años en nuestro proceso editorial, ¿qué tan conveniente consideras en este momento migrarnos a la versión 3, teniendo en cuenta que, bueno, todo nuestro proceso está dentro de la revista, o quizás sería más recomendable esperar un poco, no emocionarnos, ser prudentes y esperar a que la versión fuera un poco más estable?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. I guess related to the upgrade question. If I were in your shoes, I would probably think to myself, maybe I'll wait for 3.0.1. And 3.0.1 should be out by the end of the year. We knew right away we were going to need a 3.0.1 because things happen that you just don't expect. And we were sort of holding 3.0.1 because when everybody's doing their upgrades, when somebody discovers something that we miss, get it into 3.01 and get that out there for everybody so nobody else has that problem. That hasn't happened yet. So we haven't done a 3.0.1 because we haven't hit that unexpected problem yet. It's been going so well. But it's to the point now that there's just some very small things that are more cosmetic than anything else that it's going to be time to do that 3.0.1. So there hasn't been a showstopper. ¿Cómo se dice en español? Showstopper. But there hasn't been anything major like that. So the upgrades have been going well, but maybe being just a little bit cautious, I would probably wait for 3.0.1 if you've got a lot of content in there and you've got a lot of people to communicate with, because the upgrade is going to be far less technical and far more training human resources in moving people over to a new system. Yeah.
Buenas tardes, Karina Galvez de la Subdirección de Revistas Académicas de la UNAM. Bueno, mi pregunta es sobre si el OJS3 ya trae plantillas prediseñadas para el XML, que tú metas tu XML y ya trae como las plantillas. Y aparte de esa, quiero hacer una pregunta que están mandando por el YouTube. Ecosílaba Latinoamérica pregunta que si se puede incluir en la plataforma de OJS3 identificadores persistentes diferentes al DOI.
Yeah. No, great questions. No, we don't have any kind of templates for the XML. I mean, all of our efforts around XML have been going into this conversion tool. I think once the conversion tool is out there, we'll probably develop a couple of different themes just to give people ideas of what they can do. The lens reader I showed you as well has really been what we've been relying on for that presentation of the XML. But if you've got your own sort of XML templates already, we'd be very interested in talking with you about how you use those. And once we can help you get XML out of the system, how your templates could be applied to those, and maybe there's changes we could make to the interface that would make that easier and work well. So let me know. Let's talk more. Yes, and in terms of persistent identifiers, DOIs, yeah, the system fully works with those and is actually easier to use than OJS2. Yeah.
¿Otra pregunta? ¿Te quedó algo pendiente?
si aparte del DOI se pueden incluir otros identificadores. Esa era la pregunta del compañero.
You can add other kinds of identifiers, but it's not automated. Like with the Crossref DOI, that's sort of more built into the system, and when you make a new file, a new galley file, it will automatically, pull in the DOI and give you the appropriate ending to that. You could replace that with a different system, but it wouldn't be automated. But that's the kind of thing too for future development we'd be interested in talking more about what you're using and how that might work. That might be talking about the user group. If that's a widespread system that's being used here, then yeah, we should talk about how we could work together.
¿Alguien más?
Hola Kevin, mucho gusto. Pedro López. OJS 2 tiene ya un catálogo completo de muchos componentes, muchos plugins. He leído que no todos estos están actualmente funcionando en OJS 3. ¿Tienes alguna idea si pronto estarán libres, al menos los más ocupados, Medra, Coins? O igual habrá que esperar a la versión 3.0.1 para tener una versión más estable, no nada más en la parte del proceso, sino también la parte de gestión.
Sure. Yeah, no, again, good question. Yeah, the OJS2 had many plugins, and we haven't, just to prioritize getting the release out, we didn't do all of those plugins, and now we're looking at them on sort of a priority level by, what we know people are using and need, which is why, to some degree, we put the subscription module later, because we really wanted to focus on open access, so that was a priority. A plugin that's going to be coming out very soon is the Quick Submit plugin that lets you, skip the workflow and just upload files to get them in. Wasn't a priority for 3, but it's a priority now that we're moving towards 3.0.1. So getting a sense from people about what their priorities are would be helpful for us, because we're doing the same thing internally. We're looking at all those plugins and saying, okay, 3.0.1, 3.1, 3.2, basing that on our communications with the community. But if we've made a decision where something is in 3.2 and there's, 150 journals that need it now, that's good for us to know. So again, the community forum is a really good place to ask questions about, what about plugin X? We need that now. And then we can reply and say, good to hear, we didn't know it was so important. We can give you a rough time as to when we think that'll happen. We're also very welcome to external funding. And if there's a plugin that somebody needs right now, oftentimes we'll say, well, that looks like that's going to be about, $3,000 to develop. Let's talk. Can we raise some money to pay for that, to bump the queue? We can be bought.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
De nada.
¿Otra pregunta? ¿Ya? ¿Es todo? Bueno, muy bien. Oigan, pues muchísimas gracias, bueno, principalmente a Kevin por haber cortado sus vacaciones y por esta estupenda exposición. A ustedes por la participación. Yo quisiera también agradecerle a la gente del instituto, a Diana que hizo que esto se volviera realidad, el taller. Con el apoyo de Laura, de Elena, de Estela. Bueno, y ya, pues, ahora sí se pueden ir por un cafecito y unas galletas. Muchas gracias.
De nada. Gracias a todos. ¿Puedo tocar un foto de...?
Selfie.
¿Ah? Okay, wave. Gracias a todos. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias.
Bien. Gracias.
De nada.
Gracias.
Gracias a ti. Muy bien. Padrísimo. Sí, ¿verdad? Muy bien, sí, pues sí. Ya la red se encargar de ver lo de platicar con él, ¿no? Para lo de del financiamiento. Sí, parece que va a ser una tarea, ver si hacemos
conseguir fondos y lo de la...
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for organizing it. So many people. It was fantastic.
More questions.
Qué bien.
I just, you remember the translation of the
O sea que América Latina es
I work with her, I supervise her work. When Juan Pablo came in,
hace sinergia o se contrapone a los canales más tradicionales.
I have this idea to
Digo, las revistas grandes, las pesadas, y eso no están
into Spanish
no, pero
Bueno,
make a big school.
Yeah, I do. And especially for the 3.0
su propio
pero con el esquema de no cobrado.
one of the things that I want to do is
porque las pesadas muchas sí son propiedad de
and then I can share those so that the videos could be
Sí, esas hay, pero se ha empujado un poco también